This evening, we'd like to welcome you to the presentation from Liberty for All in regards to how to protect your vote. As you know, we're going through some troubling times within our nation. It is important that we all become further enlightened and knowledgeable of what is happening to us personally and unilaterally across this nation as we move out to vote. I was just made aware on yesterday in Orange County, California, that an African American female friend of ours went to her poll to cast her vote, and she was accosted by five white gentlemen who emphatically told her she cannot vote. She politely backed away from with fear of her presence at that time and reported it to the police, and of course went somewhere else and cast her vote. These are troubling times. We want you to know and understand how you can protect yourself and your vote in this critical election time. As always, we give honor to the greater power.
Lord God, we want to say thank you, Heavenly Father, for this opportunity to lift you up and praise you. We're asking for you to guide us and strengthen us to say what needs to be said, to give the resources that need to be shared, and the inspiration to give everyone the courage. In your word, you say, have I not commanded you? Be strong of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. For with God, nothing will be impossible. Wherever things you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive. We are asking for your protection, Lord. We're asking for your guidance, and we're asking for your wisdom and your strength so that we can inform the people to do what needs to be done in this wonderful and beautiful country we call ours, America, United States of America. We thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for that, Jeff. You heard the excitement in Jeff's voice, who is an advocate for voter participation, and he is the executive director of BOSS. Jeffrey?
Yes, sir. Right now, I give the opportunity to introduce you to Andrew Frazier. Please share with the audience in reference to what it is that you do and how you basically empower the community with your great resources.
Thanks for introducing me. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in the evening this event this evening, and definitely it's very important and very timely given what's going on. Voting and political power is very important. Also business and financial power is important. And what I do is I work with entrepreneurs and business owners and help them become more successful. Actually, as of last week, I recently started an online university called the Small Business Pro University. Do you own your business or does it own you? Is your business growing and are you making enough money? Small Business Pro University, SB Pro U, is the perfect place for busy entrepreneurs. We will empower you to become a masterpreneur by learning the secrets of creating an enterprise by going from working in your business to working on your business. Attend the SB Pro U virtual open house on October 29th and become a Masterpreneur Club member. Visit sbprou.com and register now.
Thank you, Andrew. The Omegas have spread the word on a national scale, so we're using them and their vast resources to get this word out in a very, like I say, an effective way. So thank you, Ernest. Ms. Cheryl Pelt, who is the leader of, again, Liberty for All. This is her brainchild.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. I want to welcome you. I am the chairperson for Liberty for All, and I want to welcome you to our very first webinar that has been organized by our Men's Committee of Liberty for All. So welcome. We are so proud to have this happen on today. But what is Liberty for All and why an organization like this at a time like this? Well, Liberty for All, if we go back to 2008, we organized in 2008 on the very same things that we are organizing today about racism. But then when President Obama announced his candidacy, we disbanded because some of us wanted to help him win, and we're so happy that he did. But now let's fast forward to the summer or spring, summer of 2020, just a few months ago. We saw murders. We saw the atrocities happening one after the other. Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia shot. He was stalked. We, how can we forget George Floyd with the knee in his neck, his windpipe just cut off? We witnessed him dying. And what about Rashad Brooks, who was just sleeping in his car in the Wendy's parking lot? He got out to talk with a policeman and he decided to run and he was shot for what? And then again, we cannot forget Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was shot in her home sleeping. We're still looking for justice for Breonna Taylor. These were atrocities, these were murders. We said we couldn't take it one more time. We were nauseated. So we decided to come together again, and that's how Liberty for All got together just this past summer. Our objectives are, I would say simple, but it's not so simple. We want to dismantle racism in all its forms, systematic racism. We want to call a congressional hearing on racism to put an end to it once and for all. We want to build up the infrastructure economically for our communities across the country, almost like a few Black Wall Streets, like they had a long time ago that was burnt down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And of course, we want to be of service, and we are going to be of service with our resources to help the communities become stronger. Because, you know, everybody that's on here, African Americans are the most educated and most skilled people in the world. And we have the skill and knowledge to help. And that's why we decided that we were going to put our skills together and help our people across the country. This is not just a local organization, it is across the country. We have members from all over. So if you want to join with us, we welcome you. If you're like-minded, if you like what you hear today or you want to know more, just contact us with your contact information in our Facebook, Liberty for All. Brothers and sisters, this is not a sprint. This is a journey. It's hard work. Our organization meets once a month. We used to meet twice a month, but it's once a month now that people are going back to work. But our committees are ongoing meeting, as is witnessed here with the Men's Committee. They put this on. Our committees are education, economic development, health, both mental and physical. The Men's Committee that have so many issues that they have to deal with. We're looking for partnerships of like-minded organizations. We are currently collecting Black businesses from across the country because we're going to put our Black book, our Black directory online. So if you have a business, because we don't know all the Black businesses all over. So if you do, please put that in line and we will include you. And lastly, we intend to create an Icon Hall of Fame. And that will be to remember our icons, not just Reverend Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, but others like Fannie Lou Hamer, like John Lewis. We want our people to be remembered, those that came before us who also try to strike down this evil of racism. And so with that, I want to say welcome, and I want to turn everything over. We will have questions and answers later on.
At this time, we'd like to bring Betty Anderson on, and she will give a bio of one of our presenters this evening, Marilyn Davis.
I want to present to you this evening Marilyn Davis. She's a woman who has wears multiple hats, and her newest hat that she's wearing at this moment is serving as the chairman of the New Jersey African American for Biden. Now, along with this, you know, she also is serving as a director for government affairs, you know, here in New Jersey, and she's responsible for overseeing serving as a liaison with federal, state, and local elected officials, you know, in New Jersey, and she also oversees the outreach with state legislature. And the thing of it is with Marilyn, her resume is so vast, it would take her take us at least 2 or 3 days just to go through some of the highlights, much less the detail. But without taking up more of our time, let's get to our presentation. And Marilyn, please go forth.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much, Miss Betty, for the introduction. And thank you, Jeffrey Dunn, for the invitation to participate tonight. I'm excited. We are really 5 days out from Election Day. We have little time to waste, but I'm excited about the position that we're in. I'm the chair of the New Jersey African Americans for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. In that role, we are organizing the African American community, trying to get individuals first and foremost informed of the issues, get them connected to the campaign, and certainly urge folks to vote and vote early and vote early, and then also get involved in the campaign. So tonight, I certainly want to share some insight of what's happening on the campaign. So where we are, 5 days out from Election Day, as you all have heard over and over in the news, there are about 12 battleground states, but the race is really coming down to literally a hand dozen of states. And some of the states that are now in play, certainly Florida is always in play during the presidential election, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Those are the key states right now, but we see some pickup. We see pickup right now, potentially in Georgia, in South Carolina with the US Senate race there, and also in South Carolina, Georgia. We're looking at North Carolina.
Arizona.
We definitely think that one of those 3 states we're going to pick up, right? And my colleague is joining me as well. Arizona and Maine are 2 other states that are in play that before were not in play. And I think if you're watching the movements of the candidates between now and Election Day, you will see not only the candidates, but the surrogates, you'll see the spouses and others going to key states where we either see some potential there or we want to shore up our base. So if you have relatives in those key states, it is important to please call them and say, hey, have you voted yet? If they haven't voted, urge them to vote as soon as possible. Preferably, for those states that do have early voting, go to the polling place and vote. And for those states like New Jersey, that's not in play, but New Jersey in particular, where we only have mail-in voting, urge folks to go vote as soon as possible. In most of these early vote states, the early vote period ends on Sunday. But in key states like North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida in particular, they have Souls to the Polls Sunday happening this Sunday. So please urge people that you know in those states to go vote. But they have to have a plan. So if you're on high blood pressure medicine, you have to have a plan. How am I going to take my medicine and be in line for potentially 4 hours or more? For those people who are disabled or have disabilities, we should urge them, bring a folding chair, bring some food, bring snacks, bring water. But for those organizations that have the ability to organize, to bring DJs or some type of entertainment to keep people entertained, because we need to make sure that our vote counts. And in order to do that, you may have to wait. My brother voted in South Carolina. He told me it took him 2.5 hours. But we have to implore to our people, either stay in line for 4 hours or have 4 more years of Donald Trump. Which one do you want? So I urge you that where you can, have those conversations and encourage our friends and family to have a plan for how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and make sure they have the necessary tools they need to sustain. And the other piece I want to raise is I'm happy to hear that the organization Liberty for All is focused on racism. So this is a key point. We've noticed in this campaign that the Republicans have attacked Kamala based on her race and her gender. And it is important that Black men today, that we don't allow them to sow a division between you and I. And that said, when we see over the next 5 days, they're going to come out against Kamala, and they're going to come out against Joe Biden. But in particular, when it comes to Kamala, we need Black men to defend her. We cannot allow the Republicans or the press, in that matter, to attack her race or attack her gender. So I ask you to please be vigilant and stay attuned to what's happening in the press, and use your social media platforms to defend her over the next 5 days. The other piece I want to raise is Joe Biden and Kamala are doing very well among Black people, with Black people, but certainly those of us who are 45 and above. However, the challenge is with the Gen X and the Gen Y. And for those of you who have young people in your lives, I want to ask you to have a conversation with the young people. See, I was raised in a generation where my dad said, do as I said, not as I do, and I did as he said. But these young people do not subscribe to that. You have to explain to them why they must vote, what is at stake, and make it relatable to them. So I urge you to please have conversations with young people between now and Tuesday and explain to them what's at stake so they understand they too have a stake in this race. And before I introduce the next speaker, I just want to make sure I also share with you, going back to the battleground states, why Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are so important right now. Although Vice President Biden is leading the national polls, in those particular states, he's within the margin of error. And in some cases, and these are states where you actually win or lose by less than 1%. So it is important that for those of us who have the ability and have the time to take off from work on election day, that we do that. So today is Wednesday, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Here's how you can plug in. First and foremost, you can go to the Joe Biden app. It's called Team Joe app. You can download the app, and there's a section for mobilize or how to volunteer. You can sign up tonight to start volunteering tomorrow. You can make phone calls into battleground states. But in addition to calling battleground states, we want you separately to also call at least 5 friends and family to urge them to go out and vote. But back to the Biden app. Through the app, you can call into battleground states. And for those of you who don't like to talk on the phone, mostly men, you can also text people and text into battleground states to say, hey, have you voted yet? Or hey, do you need information on where to vote? So there's a resource that you can use. But for those of us who don't want to talk on the phone, don't like texting, but we do like using technology, like our brother Andrew, you can also download information that you can share with your network to say, hey, here's what's happening on the campaign. Here's where Joe Biden stands on education or healthcare or Medicare for all. But those are things you can share with your network. So that's an opportunity for us to get involved now. But it's really important that this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and again, if you can take off from work on Tuesday, we need your help on the front lines. We need us to put your gloves on, your mask, and let's go door to door to encourage people, to remind folk that Tuesday is election day, and make sure they voted already. And if they haven't voted, we should certainly urge them to vote. And for those of you who may have questions about, am I registered? Because sometimes, so in some states, they have purged people who were once registered from the voting rolls. So there are resources that you can use right now tonight to find out, 1, if you're registered to vote, and 2, where you can vote between now and election day for those of you who have early voting, or for those of you who can vote by mail. There's a website I want to share with you. It's called iwillvote.com. iwillvote.com is a resource that you can use to find out if you're registered and where do you go vote. It's a great tool, so I urge you to use that. And for those who are unsure, especially the Gen X and Gen Ys, certainly encourage them to use that as a resource to figure out where they should go vote as well. In addition to I Will Vote, I also want to share with you another resource for those of you who are going to vote between tomorrow and Tuesday. And in the event that you have concerns about what's happening at the polls, we're hearing all kinds of stories that some places, especially in the states where they have the right to carry, people are going to the voting booths with guns, right? Or if you're uncertain about some of the regulations at the polling place, there are resources for you. In the Lawyers Committee, I think we shared the number earlier. We'll share it again. We'll continue to share the number to the Lawyers Committee, where you can call and get advice and direction at the polling booths. And as we talk about voting, I want to turn the program over to my former colleague, Pratt Wiley. Pratt and I worked at the Democratic National Committee during the 2016 presidential election. I asked Pratt to join me during this segment so that he can talk about voter protection and what it means to Black people as we go forth to vote for the next president of the United States. My colleague Pratt Wiley is currently the president and CEO of the Partnership Incorporated. It's New England's premier organization dedicated to enhancing the competitiveness of the region by attracting, developing, retaining, and convening multicultural professionals. Pratt is a leader and a strategic planner in fields ranging from law, politics, nonprofit management, and business management. Previously, Pratt served as the National Director of Voter Expansion for the Democratic National Committee, where he was responsible for designing and executing the DNC's program to ensure that every eligible voter was able to register and vote, and that every vote was accurately counted. Pratt received his bachelor's degree from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and his JD from Boston College Law School in Boston, Massachusetts. Without further ado, I present to you my colleague, Pratt Wiley.
Well, good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. Before I begin, I would just like to thank the great folks at Liberty for All, in particular, Ms. Pelt, Mr. Bridges, Mr. Dunn, Ms. Anderson, and most importantly, my dear, dear friend, Marilyn Davis. She undersold herself. Marilyn is truly one of the most talented and intelligent political operatives in the country. I have learned so much from working alongside her, and I'm just so glad for the opportunity to reconvene with her this evening. Our votes are threatened. Right, like I don't think that the folks on this call this evening are surprised to hear this. There are large segments of this population, not the least of which is the gentleman who is currently residing in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who do not want folks who look like us and the folks who we represent to cast ballots on November 3rd. Because when we do, they lose. This is something that every political operative understands. It is a cynical strategy that's actually been adopted by the Republican Party for a number of years, but it is worse now. And let me just explain just a couple of reasons why. Ms. Pelt talked about 2008. So in 2007, 2008, and part of what I do politically for a living is we organize lawyers. Right, we're the lawyers who are at the polling locations. We're the lawyers who are at the courthouses. We're the lawyers who are at the secretaries of state, making sure that everybody can vote. And in 2007, when President Obama was running for the first time you have a Black candidate running for president as the nominee, we absolutely saw an increase in hate groups and in white supremacist groups threatening the vote. We saw that number increase significantly in 2016. We saw more hate group activity instigated by Donald Trump than we saw when Barack Obama was running for president the first time. That number has grown by magnitudes again this cycle. Folks need to understand that voting is not going to be easy this time out. for a number of different reasons, because of the threats posed by the president and his supporters, by the threats posed by COVID, and then by the threats just posed by general election administration. But what we believe, what we have always believed in this industry, is that when voters are prepared, as Marilyn was saying, when you have a plan, and when that's coupled with election officials who know what they are doing, then the vast majority of the problems that we run into on election day disappear. It is so important to have a plan. It is critical to have a plan. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you're registered. If you don't know, as Marilyn said, you can go to the website iwillvote.com. We built this website as a way to ensure that every question that a voter may ask about his or her status as a voter can be answered in one simple location, right? So am I registered? If I'm not, what do I need to do to register? What do I need to bring with me? Where do I go to vote? What do I bring with me? How long might I wait in line? What is the ballot going to look like? What are some of the questions that are going to be asked? These are the fundamental questions, right? Suppose I am a student, or I'm the parent of a student. Do they vote where they go to school, or do they vote where they grew up? Suppose I am a former felon. Am I eligible to register to vote? Or is that right still prohibited? All of these are questions that we are asked in our community that we need to ask over and over again. And we need to make sure that we have a reliable resource in order to answer, because we recognize that those enemies who don't want to see us vote because they think that they can win more elections as a result are feeding misinformation, right? You see it in every campaign, every cycle, without fail. You'll see some flyer, or you'll see some Facebook post, or you'll see something on the internet that will say, don't forget election day is Wednesday, November 4th. Right? Don't forget. That type of misinformation, giving people the wrong times when you can vote, giving people the wrong day when you can vote, giving people the wrong location where you can vote. You see that all the time. You see other forms of intimidation, misinformation that you need to have all your parking tickets paid off before you vote. You can't vote if there's an outstanding warrant. You can't vote if you have outstanding child support. We see this every cycle, and we only expect to see this amplified this time. You see this, the polling location has changed. It's been closed. The water main has broken. The parking lot is closed. They're doing construction on the road. These are tactics that we know today is October 28th. We know that we're going to see these on election day. So what we can do is prepare ourselves and prepare those folks in our networks not to fall for these tricks, right? Best way not to fall for those tricks is to know where you can go to get that information. That a trusted resource where you can get that information. Now, there are some things that happen, right? There are traffic accidents, there are fires, there are emergencies, health emergencies that may in fact be true. But the odds are that they are not when you hear them on election day. And even if they are, it should not change your behavior in any way, shape, or form. You still go to that polling location and you still vote. And this is something that I think is probably the most important takeaway from anything that I'm going to share tonight. The single most important thing to do is to vote. As Ms. Pelt said, we've waited for 4 years to get this man out of the White House. We can wait for 4 hours more. Right? If you are in line, as Marilyn said, bring food, bring warm clothes, bring some hot chocolate, bring something to sit in on. Make sure you bring your mask. Make sure you bring your friends. I saw a note here in the chat. What do you do if you need to use the restroom? Make sure you have somebody who's going to save your spot in line. What do you do if you need to take a phone call? Make sure somebody's saving your spot in line. That's why you come as a group. It's part of why you come as a group. Once you are in line, so long as you are in line before the polls close, then you are entitled to vote. Polls close at 8 o'clock and the line is stretching 3 blocks, 4 blocks down the road, and it's another 2 hours before you actually get inside the building, you're still entitled to vote. That is the law across the land. If someone says that you don't have the proper ID, somebody says that you're not properly registered, somebody says that you've already voted, vote anyhow. They'll give you a provisional ballot. It'll be a different color. What it means is they're going to confirm whether or not you've already voted. They're going to confirm whether or not you're registered. And once they're able to confirm that information, your ballot's going to count. Do not leave the polling location without voting. It is the single, and do not let anybody else do it either. We talked about intimidation. And Mr. Dunn talked about this instance in California. Voter intimidation and armed intimidation, physical intimidation is, again, something that we're going to see a lot more of this cycle. The president has all but encouraged it with his rhetoric. And there are really 3 things to do. First and foremost is do not escalate the situation. If folks come and they're menacing, you don't come with more menacing folks on your end. If folks are coming armed, you don't go to the back of your car and get your shotgun. This is not how ultimately these situations are going to be resolved. Find strategies to de-escalate the situation. And you do so really for 2 reasons. One is obviously it's going to keep more people safe, but equally important is when you're able to de-escalate a situation, you're going to keep that line moving. You end up getting into a shoving match at the polling location. The police are going to come. They're going to question people. Other voters are going to be intimidated based upon just the very presence of police lights. Is much more effective, both in terms of the situation itself and in continuing to get votes through the polling location when we de-escalate. You can do that in a couple of different ways. Intimidation is a crime in every state. And so the first call should be to local law enforcement. Sometimes the folks who are doing the intimidation are themselves police officers. And so then find other valuable or trusted community leaders who can help de-escalate the situation. And those are folks who are either your local elected officials, city council members and aldermen are fantastic at this. School committee members are fantastic at this. Members of the judiciary are fantastic at this. Members of the clergy are fantastic at this. And make sure that you call a lawyer. All right, the lawyers will come, the lawyers will engage with law enforcement. If we need to take it to the FBI, if we need to take it to the state police, that's what we do. In no circumstance should anyone on this call or anyone who you are talking to, should you feel that it is a good course of action to be a vigilante on election day. It is again not safe, and it doesn't actually help us win elections. So let's just talk about some other things that we know that we're going to see. COVID is wreaking havoc on our election systems in so many different ways. One of the ways is that you're going to have a lot of poll workers for whom this is their first time working an election. It means that they're going to be confused at times. It means that they're going to be, there's a learning curve. You got to learn the machines, you got to learn the system, you got to learn the paperwork. And those curves trigger lines. We know also that people are standing 6 feet apart. We know that they're limiting the number of people who are allowed inside locations. So it means that your lines are going to be longer, certainly by distance, and it means that more people are going to be standing outside for longer in terms of time. And that, again, requires preparation. Not every incident, whether it is a machine not counting your ballot, or you think it flipped your ballot, a machine breaking, there being a line. Not every incident is in and of itself bad. Not every incident is intentional. Part of what we look for are those instances where there are either systemic problems or there are intentional misdeeds going on. Generally, those are very few and far between. And as a result, what that means is that oftentimes when you do call for assistance, whether you visit I Will Vote, whether you call the voter protection hotline from the party, whether you call 866 Our Vote if you want to use a nonpartisan organization, that they will be able to resolve those problems. And most importantly, for all of us here, we can then be confident that our votes are being counted. With that, I'm going to maybe answer some questions, but just again, be prepared, make a list, bring friends, and whatever you do, don't leave that line without voting. And through those simple steps, we can really change this country.
Yes. Thank you, Pratt. That was very good. Jeff, we're open to taking questions.
Okay, Ernest, will you start your first question, Ernest? Well, I have a question. The question they have is, what if you have to, again, use the restroom? And also, what do you do when you have a challenge in regard to leaving the line for any reason? Could you please share, Pratt?
Yeah, leaving the line. So really the best thing to do to ensure that you are, that your place is saved is to bring a friend, right? The buddy system is really the most effective way to ensure that your place is going to be saved. In most lines, if someone needs to leave to use the restroom, especially when the lines are long, right? There are some lines that are going to be hours long. I actually waited for 90 minutes myself when I voted early a couple of weeks ago. Generally, if you're in line with other folks for that amount of time, you make friends, and I'll hold your place in line while you use the restroom, and then you do the same for me. And those are really the most effective ways. In some jurisdictions, you actually get a number, right? And they manage the lines that way, so you don't have to worry about that. But that's not always going to be the case. But what will always be the case is that you can use your community, whether it's folks that you bring in on the front end or whether it's folks that you meet there in line, to ensure that you continue to move along at pace.
Ernest, you have the next question?
Yes, I have one. I believe it's Elijah Conyers. Will they take temperatures outside the polling place?
That's a good question. I know I know that many states are mandating masks. I think almost every state at this point is mandating masks within the polling location. I don't know if there are any places that are going to be taking temperature before you go inside. But actually, I will tell you that I Will Vote will probably have that information.
Right. A question that's been asked is, what if your government ID has an expiration date and it's passed? So in other words, it's perceived to be not valid.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
That's going to depend upon your state. In some states, well, first of all, you got to remember that the reason that you have an ID requirement in the first place is allegedly because they want to make sure that you are who you say you are. Now, in some states, if your ID has expired, they're not going to accept that ID as a valid form of identification, even though the photo is the same, the name is the same, the address is the same. You can verify who you are. You are who you say you are by showing that expired ID, but they still don't take it. So it's just an example of how cynical these voter ID laws are. But at this stage, with 6 days to go before Election Day, those laws aren't changing, and so you're better off finding another form of identification. And for most states, there are multiple forms of identification in addition to a driver's license that you can use.
Text messages with the questions. They were labeled like question 1, you know. Oh, okay. You see them.
Okay, so next question is what is the time? What is the time in reference to when the polls are closed? Is that year round?
Is that what time do the polls close?
Yes. Is it the same
everywhere?
everywhere?
That varies by state. So I actually had in my office this table of in every state when the polls open and when they close. And you've got to remember that there are some states that have multiple time zones, and sometimes polls are going to open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. in your respective time zone. In other states, it's going to be, we open at 7 a.m. Eastern time and we close at 8 p.m. Central, and that's true across the state. So you really do need to check with your state and with your local polling location and make sure that you know what the hours are when you can actually go and vote.
And I think iwillvote.com has that information. So
it has all that information.
Check with iwillvote.com.
Mr. Wiley.
Will that also show the polling location in your area?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Wiley,
Along
I
with a
have a
map of
question.
how to get
That's
there.
good, because we had several people inquiring as to how to find out where to vote. Next question we have: how can I make sure my mail-in ballot is received and counted?
So again, this is going to be based partially by your state. So many states are tracking this information. And you can go either to I Will Vote, or you can go to the respective Secretary of State or Board of Elections website, and they will tell you when your application for a mail-in ballot was received, when that ballot was mailed to you, when it was received back, and when it was processed. Now, not every state, even those that are putting this information on the website, not every state is updating this information in real time. And so another approach that you can use if you are really worried is you can always call. But excuse me, with each of these steps, you've got to make sure that you're allowing at least a little bit of time for the postal service to bring things up into the processing center. So usually if it's a day or so, don't worry quite yet. But if it's gone more than a day or two without you seeing any update, then you should immediately call. And if they don't have a record of it by election day, you go and you vote. And what you vote in person. And what they will do when you do vote in person is they will give you, again, one of those provisional ballots. It'll be a different color, like I said before, because they will have a record of you having requested an absentee ballot. You vote, it goes in, and then if they don't have a record of having received your mail-in ballot, the ballot that you cast in person will count.
Mr. Wiley, I have a question. How true is it, and also Marilyn, how true is it? We've been hearing that when some states come in, like Florida or Arizona, we will know the results. How true is that? Some of these, battleground states.
And Pratt, I'll just jump in. We will not know the victor on election night.
Okay.
And in some cases, people can still vote by mail up until November 3rd. And most states won't certify the voting process until sometime after. So for instance, in New Jersey, I think New Jersey has until November 23rd to certify the ballots. So we may have an idea based on the polls that take place at different in different states on election night, for instance. And Pratt, keep me honest here, but I believe some states are allowing you to count absentee or vote by mail ballots in advance of November 3rd, but not
That's
every.
right.
But not
That's
every.
right.
So it is unlikely that we'll know who the victor is on November 3rd.
Okay.
And I think one thing to keep in mind is that's normal. That's perfect. All of this is exactly how the system works all the time. But people have never paid attention to this before.
No.
Nerds
A lot
like
of
me
things we
do,
have.
right? Like during recounts, you care about this. But normally what happens is it takes a couple of days for all the votes to finally come in and be counted. We don't have this many votes being cast early and by mail because of the pandemic. And we don't have crazy people questioning the validity of the process, but this is actually how it works, right? And there are going to be hiccups along the way because there are hiccups in every election, no matter how big or how small. And that's honestly, that's a reason to trust this process rather than to distrust our process.
And Pratt, I think it's worthwhile making giving a few comments around the opportunity to cure your ballot, because in some states, I think recently South Carolina came out and said your signature does not have to match what you initially registered to vote to now. It doesn't have to match, but some states do require. New Jersey is one of them where your signature on your ballot must match when you initially registered. But there is an opportunity for those who are in a situation. I signed my name multiple ways. I have no idea how I signed when I first registered. So if my signature is not the same, but when I believe the state has to notify you if your vote isn't counted. Don't quote me on that. But I will have the opportunity to cure if my signature doesn't match. So Pratt, can you talk about that as well?
That's right, and that's true really for a lot of the reasons why someone may vote provisionally. All right, so let's say someone says that your signatures don't match, you still vote, you still submit that ballot. It's a different colored ballot, but it will count when they can prove that you are who you say you are, you live where you say you live, and you haven't voted in some other means. And so let's say to one of the questions earlier, you have an expired driver's license, and that's the only form of ID that you have with you when you go and vote. You vote provisionally, and then you have depending upon the state, whether it's a few hours or a few days, to come back with another acceptable form of ID, whether it's a passport, whether it's a utility bill, what have you, in that particular state. The same is true, as Marilyn says, for signature matching. The same is true for registration. So there are lots of opportunities where if somebody if somebody is trying to turn you away, right, and you can correct whatever it is, whatever they're arguing is wrong, but you can only do it if you cast that vote in the first place.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So we have a time for one more question, Pratt.
Okay,
One more.
at this point, should we just vote in person due to the post office? In other words, what's happening in our postal system, should we just vote in person?
I would say yes. I would say yes. I think voting in person is, first of all, we talked about icons, right? We have some of us on this call, some of you on this call, and then many of us who have benefited from what you all have done, have put your lives on the line in order to ensure the franchise for us and our people. Voting is going to be more dangerous this year because of COVID and because of, again, these increased threats. But vote in person. If you haven't voted in person, if you haven't already mailed in your ballot and you haven't already received confirmation that it has been processed, plan to vote in person. It is the only way to ensure that your vote is going to count.
That's a great way to close. That's an outstanding way to close. We have to be as intentional in reference to our advocacy as they're trying to block our right to vote. Okay, and I want to say I am thoroughly inspired, encouraged, and empowered by what you have shared, Pratt and Marilyn. We thank you for the meat and potatoes of this call in a very big way. We need to basically be as vocal as we can. We do not have the luxury of being passive with this message. Don, would you like to share your closing remarks in regard to the men's committee of the organization?
As men, we undertake our ancestral responsibility to uphold and defend the dignity and the rights of our families and our communities, following the sacrifices of our ancestors. So it is important that we identify and amplify our objectives, that we highlight the issues and solutions. The Men's Wing of Liberty for All will contact you in the near future concerning other forums and pertinent information. We humbly appreciate your participation. Organize and plan. Plan and organize. iwillvote.com. iwillvote.com. Each one, reach one, teach one, and vote. iwillvote.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Cheryl, do you have closing remarks as leader of our organization?
Yes. Yeah, just very briefly, if you like what you heard, the men's division organized this. We have several committees, as I said, education, media, health committee and whatnot. We're just getting started, you guys. You know that what we want to do is to dismantle systematic racism. And we are committed. We are just who we are. We are a collective of men and women who want to eradicate racism and to better our communities across the United States. So if you like what you heard, please go to Liberty for All on Facebook. And by the way, if there's anybody here who is a webmaster or can design web pages, please contact us. Just put your information in the Facebook Liberty for All Facebook, and somebody will contact you because we really need somebody to do a web page for us. So I am just so happy that our first one was very informative. We want to thank Pratt and Marilyn. Anytime you want to come back, you're welcome. And this was a great event, fellas. So can we give everybody a hand? And very good, very good. Jeff, back to you.
Well, I want to say thank you, everybody. This has been a meaty conversation, a great dialogue, and great information. Please share, be strong, be with courage, and know that nothing is impossible. Again, if you have put our minds to it. Lord God, we want to say thank you for all you're doing with us, through us, and for us. Wherever things you will ask for in prayer, believing we will receive, you will receive.
Thank you all for your participation tonight. I want to leave you with a quote from one of my favorable scholars, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who back in 1933 wrote, "History shows that it does not matter who is in power. Those who have not learned to do for themselves and have to depend solely on others never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end than they had in the beginning." Thank you all for participating. Remember, if you have voted, encourage those who are around you who have not voted. Trust me, there's a lot out there who are still on the fence and have not made up their minds to vote. Please reach out to those individuals and encourage them. Again, thank you all for your participation. We love you. God bless you and take care.
Good night, everybody.